The woman is 40 and she still looks good. Every now and then she puts on black stockings and waits for her husband to come home. In her eyes, she's the happiest woman alive. She can't even let the family photo be a little bit skewed. You can see how much she seeks perfection, but she never realized how much her husband had gone too far. On the surface, her husband spoiled her like a little woman, but the wife doesn't know that her husband is guilty. Maybe it's because her husband is a director by training. His acting skills are no match for his words. He even bought her a scarf, but this scarf revealed her husband's true nature. The two of them didn't even hide their love from their son who was having breakfast, because the wife was confident that her husband loved her, and he would come home and rain or shine, and he can't wait to make love to her. And a woman is not a vase. She works as a vice president in a hospital, but one day she suddenly realized something was wrong. There was a hair on her scarf that didn't belong to her. She picked it up carefully. When she was sure it was brown, she began to suspect her husband. 2 days ago, when she was arranging his clothes, suddenly a lipstick fell out of her dress. But her husband didn't panic. Instead, he calmly explained, because his mouth was too dry, he bought a lip balm and realized that he had bought the wrong one. At that time, she even laughed at us for being so light. The husband was happy to have found a stupid wife, but I don't know that there is no such thing as a stupid woman. It's the wife who never suspected him. But now that the truth is so obvious, even a fool would suspect. So when the wife picked up her son from school, she would look out for the man with the brown hair, but she reminded herself over and over that it was a mistake. But just as she was picking up her son, a woman stopped her. It was her husband's secretary. The woman thanked her husband for giving her a job. After all, it's hard to find a job when you're divorced. The wife asked, "Don't you finish at 7 o'clock?" The secretary told her that the company always finishes at 5. But the strange thing is that her husband told her that he finished at 7 o'clock. Every time he came back, it was always 7:30 on the dot. That's more accurate than the alarm clock. She didn't expose her husband directly because she wasn't sure. She didn't want to embarrass their relationship. And now she has to be sure of one thing. Unbeknownst to her, her son had already noticed something wrong with his mom today. But the smarter the child, the more tired he is. Soon he packed a bowl of bone soup for his girlfriends. She didn't know that her best friend was getting suspicious of her. Her wife asked her if she would lose her hair if she dyed it brown. She explains that her hair will fall out even if she doesn't dye it. She also said confidently that the color of her hair makes her look different. So the wife intentionally said, "Recently, my husband's body seems to have been emptied out. Did your husband say anything to you when he came back?" When she got back, she stared at her husband's cell phone. She was hesitating whether to look at it or not. Her husband came in. She wondered if he had a guilty conscience. But strangely, when her husband went to take a shower, he didn't take his cell phone away. Curiosity drove her to look at it. What's even more strange is that there's no password set on the phone. She didn't have time to think, but she quickly looked inside. But the phone was cleaner than her face. Thinking she'd found nothing, she put the phone down. At that moment, a text message came in ordering flowers. The wife's sixth sense told her the flowers were not for her. So the next day, she secretly followed her husband. Sure enough, she saw him drive into the flower store. But at that moment, a couple was arguing. They even pressed him against the hood of her car. The wife panicked because she recognized the girl, and the girl recognized the man in the car. Next thing you know, he's pulling her away. The girl struggles to get free and asks the woman to help her because she's sure that the man in the car is a doctor. You know, the woman is not only a doctor, but she's also very responsible. She's just having trouble sleeping. She wanted the doctor to give her some sleeping pills. The doctor was afraid that she wouldn't be able to do it. He refused, knowing that there is no hope. The girl pulled out and left. At this moment, the two of them do not know. Their destinies would be tied together. Now she finally knew why the girl couldn't sleep at night. Watching the girl being dragged away, he wanted to get out of the car to save her. Suddenly she saw her husband coming out of the flower store. She couldn't care less about the girl. She had to know what her husband was hiding from her. Before she left, she just glanced at the girl. She saw that it was just a couple having a fight and let it go. The woman is now extremely nervous. She could imagine what was going to happen next. Where would a man go to order flowers? But strangely, she followed her all the way to the nursing home. She knew that her mother-in-law lived there all year round, so she composed herself and came in. She may be old, but she's not stupid. On the surface, she thanked her daughter-in-law for coming to see her. In fact, she already knew what was going on. When she saw the flowers on the table, she found an excuse to take them out. Seeing the look in his wife's eyes, the husband knew he needed to explain to her to put her mind at ease. So the wife began to waver. She thought she had misunderstood her husband. Just as her husband arrived, he thanked her for taking the time to come over to see my mom. The wife asked, "Do you always come to see mom when you're late?" The husband smiled and said, "I can't go anywhere else for 2 hours. The implication is that I come to see mom every day. I just don't want you to worry about mom's condition." At this moment, the wife felt even more remorseful. How could she doubt her husband like that? But when she went to the nurse's station to get a vase of flowers, the nurse thanked them for coming to see the old man, so that the old man's mood is better. Their workload will also be reduced. In the past 6 months, The old lady has been clamoring to see her son. She's been saying you haven't been here for a long time. Obviously, the husband lied. The mother asked the son what had happened to you, but the son didn't know that his mother had died at their hands. At night, the wife pretended to read a book. She wanted to talk to her husband when the son fell asleep, but then the husband had to go out on the pretext that he had a business meeting. He wanted to see if there was any chance of getting sponsors. I heard that the chairman of the board was helping his wife. When she heard that, she said we could go together. The chairman's wife invited me. I don't know if it's true, but my husband agreed. Soon, the two of them arrived at the party together, and his target was the chairman in front of him. He had been thinking about it for a long time, so he had the courage to go up to her. But even though he bowed and introduced himself, but the chairman didn't even look at him. He was embarrassed. His wife, who was not far away, saw his embarrassment, so she went up to congratulate her wife, and she greeted her warmly. She even introduced herself as the vice president. The president also thanked her. The woman took her husband and introduced him. He's the director of an entertainment company that makes movies. She asked him to take care of her company. Through the chairman's introduction, he was introduced by the chairman to some powerful men who knew him. This scene was seen by the waiter. In fact, the wife hated her husband so much. Suddenly she saw a man in the corner, and this person is the waitress. The wife recognized her at once. She apologized for not helping her last time, but the waitress had a favor to ask. He asked her to prescribe some sleeping pills. The wife sighed. She also relies on sleeping pills to sleep, because she now suspects that her husband is having an affair. The waitress had a brainwave. I can help you. Knowing that the wife is busy working at the hospital during the day, husband started to go out secretly, but she doesn't know that she has a mole, and she knew every move he made. The waitress stayed in the car all day, and she got the results. Soon the wife got a definite answer. Unfortunately, she didn't see his face, but I did get a picture of his license plate. Although she had already prepared herself, but the result left her at a loss. So she prepared a special birthday party for her husband. She hid in the car and watched his every move from afar. Soon a car came into her sight. She immediately compared it to the photo. She didn't realize that the car belonged to the chairman's family, but the chairman's wife could never be. Then it's most likely her daughter. So she adjusted her mind. She used the spare key to open her husband's trunk, because the attendant told her, "Your husband was carrying a blue bag." Sure enough, the bag was found in the secret compartment. Inside was her panties and a sex toy. She cursed her husband for being a monster. She didn't realize he had a cell phone. She really underestimated her husband. It turns out he's having an affair with the chairman's daughter. But what she never expected was that everyone around her knew about their relationship. She was a fool in their eyes, so she grabbed a scalpel and tried to end it all. But the scene where she stabbed her husband was just a fantasy. She was furious, but she knew she couldn't act on her anger. She was even angrier that her husband was holding hands with a girl in front of her. The wife couldn't understand why such a young girl would want to be with her husband, but the marriage was no longer viable. At night, she got angrier and angrier. She was about to leave with a suitcase in her hand, but then she looked at her son's calendar filled with travel plans with his father. She hesitated. Soon after, her husband came home in a drunken stupor. He didn't even notice his wife's behavior. The next day she prepared breakfast for them as usual. He watched her kissing her son. I don't know if it was a sign of weakness. He immediately got up to indicate that he wanted to do the same. The wife didn't move. She had to endure it for the sake of her son. But when she was at work, she happened to see a girl in the hospital, and she even hung up her number. Said she recently tired to check. Unexpectedly, his wife directly fishing for her arm to draw blood. As a veteran, we all know why the blood was drawn. In fact, the girl had already tested her pregnancy at home, so she intentionally put her lipstick into the man's pocket so that the wife will be aware of it. When it was confirmed that the couple's relationship was slowly breaking down, she intended to let the first wife find out that she was pregnant so that she could get out of the house. But the wife didn't panic and taunted her that she was just a piece of excrement. Her husband would never take responsibility. When the girl left, the wife became anxious. She immediately went to the bookstore to buy some books on divorce cases. But when she was checking out, she suddenly realized the girl had prepared books about babies. Apparently she was going to have a baby. Unbeknownst to her, the girl's courage came from her husband, because the man promised her that he would divorce his wife as soon as possible so that she could have the baby in peace. Maybe he's prepared for the worst. The wife called a lawyer. The lawyer reminded her, if the divorce is finalized, she'll have to establish his assets and provide evidence that he's cheating on her, so you can leave him with nothing. Soon after, she went to her husband's company to review the company's financial statements. The secretary thought the wife was concerned about the company's capitalization, so she blurted it out. She said, "It's a good thing you guys mortgaged your house to pay for it." The wife appeared calm and collected, but as soon as she got home, she went through all the family assets. She didn't realize that her husband had mortgaged the house, but when she saw the amount in the bank book, she was shocked. All the money had been transferred, even her son's insurance money. She was chilled to the bone. She didn't expect her husband to be so cruel. Then don't blame her for being merciless. At that moment, Her husband sent a message saying he had to work overtime. He told her to get some rest and not to wait for him. The wife knew what he was doing, so a bold plan emerged. The mother-in-law woke up in the hospital. She found her daughter-in-law staring at her. She hadn't been here for half a year. Knowing that her son had a woman, she was calm. She told her daughter-in-law to turn a blind eye. It's normal for a man to cheat on his wife. Just deal with it quietly. When she heard her daughter-in-law say that the girl was pregnant, mother-in-law realized that her son had gone too far, so she promised her daughter-in-law. She promised her daughter-in-law that she would let her son keep the family. She would never let him abandon his wife and children like his father did, and asked the daughter-in-law to be more generous. When the daughter-in-law heard this, she became even more furious. A man can secretly transfer assets. A man can secretly transfer his assets, even her son's insurance money. Such a man is not worth forgiving, so I'll divorce him. Then I'll tell him to get out of here with no money. The daughter-in-law's words deeply irritated the mother-in-law. When the daughter-in-law was about to leave, mother-in-law went to scold her for not understanding her husband. My son is the most pitiful. His family is in the middle. Don't you know how to give her a break? The daughter-in-law got the message. Is it my fault that your son cheated on you? A child can't grow up without a father. But the daughter-in-law only thought her mother-in-law didn't want her to get a divorce. But she didn't realize that her son was really ruined by her hands. The next day, her mother-in-law died in her hospital room. The son cried his heart out. He was like a dutiful son. The daughter-in-law calmly prepared her mother-in-law's funeral. I don't know if he was too sad. The son looked so disheveled. The wife asks her husband to fix his makeup. It's not polite to wait for the mourners. Soon the chairman and his family arrive. The husband looks nervous. He even fixed his hair. The wife knew what she was thinking. Even the son could see what his father was up to. I didn't realize he was being so obvious. He even licked their shoes like a dog. The wife didn't dare say anything, but she didn't realize that her husband was trying to please the chairman. He ate with them, but the chairman didn't know that the reason for the man's favor was because he had a daughter. The wife couldn't stand it anymore. She wanted to go out for a walk. Suddenly, the man's cell phone rang. He looked around nervously. After determining the location of the other party, he quickly went to the corner, and this scene was seen by his wife. At that moment, more and more people were paying their respects, but the son was the only one left here. The son did not know what to do, so he could only ask his brother's best friend, "Where did Dad go?" But he searched every corner, but he didn't see him. They couldn't even reach him on the phone. At this point, the wife followed her husband all the way. What she didn't expect was for their car to start vibrating. It was incredible. At this time, my best friend also followed the wife's line of sight. He also noticed the movement in the car. He didn't say anything. After all, everyone knew about his friend, and his wife didn't say anything about it because she had a lot of work to do. Soon this filial son settled his mother, but the look on his face was 100%. The wife asked her mother-in-law in her mind, "Are you happy with the way your son has sent you off?" But just as everyone was about to leave, the wife slowly stopped walking. Suddenly she felt a tightness in her chest and shortness of breath. She didn't dare to look back. She was afraid that her mother-in-law's wish had not been fulfilled. At night, when she was resting, she put on a bright nightgown in front of her husband. Then she couldn't wait to get under the covers. But the husband wasn't interested. He pretended to put his arms around her for fear that she would suspect him, but she didn't know how reluctant she was. Even so, she had to act like she wanted to, because only in this way could the husband lower his guard, so that she could give him a good stab. She woke up early before dawn. She ran into her husband's accountant, Tae-sik. He got out of the car. He asked if there was something troubling him, but Tae-sik was still trying to break it down. He said he saw the scene in the parking lot last night. The woman said it was nothing, but the neighbors are adding fuel to the fire. She said her husband is a scum. Seeing the woman in such a state of despair, Tae-sik offered to help, but the woman knew that all men are the same, so she politely declined and left. The next day, she was thinking about how to get back at her husband. Suddenly the nurse brought her flowers. She said, "Your husband is so romantic." The woman picked up the card. She didn't realize it said, "I'll always love you." In fact, it's from Tae-sik. The woman didn't understand, but he told her not to be so tired of living. It's better to live your life as you wish, and that seemed to wake her up. First thing in the morning, she started to make herself up. She was so well groomed that her husband couldn't take his eyes off her. The first step was a success. The second step, she went to Tae-sik's appointment as scheduled. At first, they just had a drink. They were just talking about her scumbag husband, but after they've had enough to eat, the conversation gets better and better, and Tae-sik finally showed his true colors. He pulled out a rune card that he had already prepared. The implication is that you can do the same to your husband. Seeing that the woman didn't say anything back, Tae-sik knew he could go and prepare. Sure enough, the woman took that step and opened the door. She knew that once she entered, there was no turning back. She didn't realize that her plan was to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. The woman did not say anything. She just undid her belt. She even took the initiative. The husband at home was unaware of this. Taeshik here is still savoring it, but the woman is starting to make a move. She asked if we should tell your wife about our relationship. Taeshik immediately panicked. He thought the woman was just trying to get back at her husband. My wife should not be involved. The woman threatened him to get the details of her husband's company's money. Taeshik realized that he was being used. The woman replied with a firm yes, but she didn't know that Taeshik is not a good person either. No sooner had she arrived home, Taeshik followed her home. The woman did not expect him to be so bold. At the same time, her husband had a phone call to take. The woman asked Taeshik what he meant, and Taeshik guessed the woman's purpose is not to prepare for a divorce and share his property. Seeing that the plan was revealed, the woman wanted to give up, but Taeshik took her hand. He told her that your husband's company is just a shell. He transferred all the money to his personal account, plus the fucking death benefit totaled more than 300 million. The woman sucked in her breath, seeing that she's achieved her goal. The woman stops, but Taeshik is not willing to do that. He says he's not done yet. The woman realizes she's in trouble with a scoundrel. Seeing that her husband is going downstairs, the wife tries her best to get away from Taeshik, but the husband senses something. No matter how the wife explains, the husband didn't say anything, but just kept it in his mind. At night, when his wife went to the bathroom, husband still could not resist trying to look at her cell phone, but he didn't know her password, so he could only turn a blind eye. But I didn't expect that the next day, Taeshik would bring the woman the most shocking news. Hearing this, the woman could no longer control, so she pretended to trick her husband into coming out and said she'd take him to dinner. For some reason, the husband felt uneasy. Soon the wife brought him here. He wanted to stop her, but it was too late. Seeing that it was his doctor, Madam invited him into the house, but she didn't know that the doctor didn't want to drink. He seemed to be offering them a glass of wine, but in fact, he was giving them a hint. On the surface, he praised the design of the house. The husband was instantly alarmed, but the wife went to the second floor. The husband followed her. When he saw his wife reaching for something, he instinctively stopped her, and this familiar voice was heard by the daughter of the house. The husband realized everything. At that moment, Xianjin went out of the room in a rage. Seeing that it was about time, the wife just let go of her hand. Obviously she did it on purpose. The husband was speechless and didn't know what to say, but the wife was talking to herself. You shouldn't touch other people's things. Xianjin understood what she was saying. The lady invited them to dinner. Looking at the pieces on the floor, her ladyship's face turned sour, but the woman just said her hand slipped. She didn't feel guilty at all. Xianjin was furious and stared at the man, but the man was like a coward. He didn't say a word, but I didn't realize that at the dinner table, the wife couldn't hold it in any longer and said one thing, and that's when things got out of hand, even ruined her own life. The mother ignored her son's feelings. She took him to the beach by force. He grabbed his son's hand and tried to persuade him. He wanted to tell him that he and I would live together for the rest of our lives, but the son was acting differently. Father abandoned you, not me. The mother thought her son needed comfort, so she tried to reassure him. We can live happily without our father. But the son pushed her away because he didn't want to live with her. The mother didn't realize she'd raised a monster. But the son explained, because you've been busy. It was my father who was with me every day. No matter how the mother explained, the son still insisted on going to see his father. When she saw her son leaving, the mother lost her mind, and the father realized that his son had been taken away by his wife. An uneasy feeling came over him. Yesterday, the wife pretended to bring her to the chairman's home, and she thanked him for investing in her husband's company. She's got the same vision as your daughter. I'm not sure what's going on with her. You know, they're in a relationship of sorts, but I've never heard her talk about her father's investment. The chairman could tell that the woman was saying something. Even the madam could see it. So he asked her if she was having a bad day. The wife took over and said directly, my husband's soul has been stolen. Xianjin's heart was in her throat, and the woman said it right away. She asked her if she was planning to have a child with her husband. Seeing the chairman's expressionless face, the woman continued to ask her husband what kind of eloquence he used to get the investment. The husband tried to explain, but every word was a misunderstanding. Xianjin was chilled to the bone. When she saw the man shaking his head and signaling her not to say anything, her anger immediately rose to the top of her head, so she took it out on her wife. She picked up a bottle of wine and smashed it. After this tragedy, the man knew it was too late, so he catches up with his wife. Who's leaving? He asked. Are you comfortable with this mess? The wife coldly sent him 2 words of divorce, only to see the husband explaining all the time. I am the president of the daughter, just hot-headed. I did not do things that should not be done soon over it. I did not expect the wife did not get angry, but told her the news. Because I was hot-headed, I accidentally slept with your good brother Taeshik. The husband did not expect his wife to do this to get back at him. At this moment, he suspected that his wife was mentally ill, threatened to send her to a psychiatrist in order to prevent his wife from getting a divorce. The next day, the man went to the director, learned that the subordinate to divorce this cannot affect the medical ethics, knowing that her husband was doing this because he couldn't let go of his son, so she was forced to go to her son's school. Not caring that her son was still in class, she took him away, and her husband, who had known her nerves, he tried to take him away but he was too late. Then he used his son's cell phone to locate him and drove all the way there. But the more he drove, the more he felt something was wrong, because this is a dead-end road to the beach. The son also sensed his mom's abnormality. He wanted to get his cell phone to call his father. The mother threw her cell phone out in a hurry. The son was even more panicked. So at the beach, he had to ask to live with his father. The mother held him back and threatened to kill him. If you say you want to live with your father, then we'll die together. The husband was very upset about losing his bearings. At that moment, his wife called him. She asked him to come home. Unbeknownst to him, this one trip home, the man completely ruined himself. The husband grabbed his wife by the hair. He accused her of being a monster. How dare she do this to her son? How dare she do this to her son? How dare she do this to her son? Seeing her husband's anger, the wife was not only not afraid, but also added fuel to the fire. It's because of you that your son is in such a state. In the eyes of the husband, his wife had gone mad, so he choked her to vent his anger. Such a mother doesn't deserve to live. But even if he kills her, her son will come back. The poor son only wanted to call his father. His mother threw away his cell phone. When he heard his wife say she pushed his son into the sea, the husband lost his mind. Soon the son came back. Seeing his mother lying motionless on the ground, the son's heart was clenched into a ball. But the father breathed a sigh of relief. It was good to see his son back, but the son backed away in fear and told his father to get out of the house. Only then did the father realize that his wife had set him up. Soon the wife got the divorce papers as she wanted, although her face was scarred. But it was all worth it. Knowing that the man now has nothing, his lover found him, told him to put out his cigarettes. It's bad for the baby. When the man heard that he wanted to give birth to the child, he didn't realize that God had closed a door for her and opened a window for him. She threw her arms around her lover. She swore to herself that she'd live up to her name. She vowed to show her wife what she could do without her husband. She and her son lived a dull but happy life. If this is the end of it, all the wounds could be healed. But there are some people who insist. 2 years later, the wife received an invitation. It was her ex-husband's family who had a baby girl. She knew her husband was up to no good. 2 years later, today, it was time for her husband to visit her son. Sure enough, the son saw his father waiting for him after school. Nowadays, his father is a famous producer. He even drives a fancy car. But the son didn't like him at all. She had to get into his car because her classmates were watching. The father's goal was to get the child to recognize him. He said he's a different person now. He even prepared his favorite baseball for his son. He also encouraged his son that the baseball player Jungwon will come to our house this weekend. I'll have him sign autographs for you. At night, the mother asked her son, "How about we go on vacation this weekend?" But her son flatly refused. He said he had a date with a classmate this weekend. Mother wondered if he'd go to his father's place. But then she thought, no, I don't think so. Soon it was the weekend. Although the man was married for the second time, but there was a lot of excitement here. The lover's nominal wife. Although the original wife let go, but her heart is clogged. Suddenly she received a message from the man. She didn't realize her son was really going to his father's wedding. The mom was furious. In fact, the son only wanted to get a baseball player's autograph, but the father was ready to take advantage of the situation to get his son to accept him. But her lover watched the man take her son upstairs. She knew the boy would be a hindrance to their relationship. The man just wanted to tell his son, "This room is for you." The son was about to say something when he realized his father's wife was standing outside the door. He even confronted him about the room not being planned. The man pretends he can handle it, but as soon as he leaves the house, he's disliked by his wife. But the lover didn't realize she'd chosen the scummiest man in the world. The boy locked the parking lot just after school. He stared at all the cars. Finally, he locked on to one car. Then he took out something he had already prepared. He drew a line on the car. It wasn't that the boy was bored, but he hated the owner of the car. On the surface, his father was very nice to him. He said he would leave him the best, although he knew that his father was always unreliable. But looking at his father holding his sister and doting on her, his heart was full of mixed feelings. He knew that his father's love no longer belonged to him alone, but he hadn't realized that his heart was twisted. He even wanted to sabotage his father's wife's car. If this vixen hadn't bewitched his father and gave birth to a daughter, the family would have been shattered. Then the father suddenly realized that his son hadn't taken the gifts he'd given him. He kept it in his heart. The next day, the man stopped in front of his ex-wife's house, staring at the surveillance camera of her house. He had a bad idea. At night, his wife and son were having dinner. Suddenly the window was smashed. Such a big rock was thrown in. Mother and son were so scared, they cowered in a ball. Soon after they calmed down, the mother cleaned the house. But then the doorbell rang. She heard that her ex-husband had come to deliver something to her son. When the mother was hesitating to open the door, the son ran quickly and said it was me who called his father. The poor son didn't know that his father had set him up. He even acted as a responsible man to fix the window. Seeing the son's favor with him increased a little bit, the man began to say that this place is not safe. How about our son staying at my place? But his ex-wife gave him a direct order to leave. This is a safe place for him to stay. Unbeknownst to him, this statement made the man's mind up again. Not even a few days of peace and quiet here. The woman received a threatening letter. A few short words made her panic. She wanted to go after her son to take him to school, but she realized her son wasn't going to school, so she followed him all the way. Strangely, her son went to the hospital where he worked, and he had a special psychiatric appointment. The son didn't realize his mother was following him. A coworker reminded him to calm down. It's just a counseling session. At this point, she couldn't calm down at all. She even shouted at her colleague. You gave him a consultation without his guardian's consent? He's a minor. The mother was speechless. She watched her son walk out from under her nose. In fact, he's been in therapy. That day, when he secretly scratched the vixen's car, this doctor saw him. With the experience of a psychiatrist, he knew that the boy's heart must be twisted. From that day on, the man decided to pull the boy to shore. From a coworker, the mom learned that it's because their divorce has affected the child. The child was caught in the middle of you two and couldn't breathe. A coworker kindly reminded her, don't prevent him from seeing his father. Let nature take its course. The mother was remorseful. The next day, she stopped interfering with her son's ideas. She didn't even object when he asked to go to his father's house, but she overlooked her ex-husband's tactics. At the dinner table, the father carefully asked her son to eat more. He even pretended to please him by saying, it's the first time I've seen my sister eat so well. It's all because of your brother. The son understood his father's intention. He didn't say anything. He just ate his meal in silence. Naturally, the woman could see that the atmosphere was unusual, so she excused her husband. First, she confessed that she shouldn't have broken up your family. But I love your father with all my heart. But your father has always loved you. That's why I'll treat you like my own son. Because your father will only be happy if you are happy. Suddenly my sister dropped her spoon. The brother immediately picked it up for her. And that's how he proved that the boy had accepted his sister. The man's heart felt a sense of relief. He was sure that he had made the right choice. But the boy's mom was so lonely. In order not to affect her son's heart, she could only let her son make his own choice. Suddenly, she saw her son, so she instinctively wanted to see how he was doing. When she saw that his place had been taken, her heart was torn apart. But now her son was really happy. What reason did she have to disturb her peaceful life? When she got back, she started to pack her things and leave. Without mom, her son is still happy. But she didn't know it was all superficial. The man here has just returned home. He suddenly noticed a bag in the locker room, so he was curious to check it out. When he saw what was inside, his whole head went numb. He yelled at his lover. The lover didn't say a word, but his son in the study heard the noise. He asked his lover, did you plan this all alone? To bring my son here? The purpose is to send him abroad. But I didn't realize that the lover's son had a good point. Going abroad is for your son's future. But in the husband's eyes, he thinks his wife is so selfish. He said again, don't even think about touching my son. Listening to the sound of quarrels outside, my son realized that he was unnecessary after all. The next day, my son went to school, looking at his stepmother and sister. They were still very attentive to him. He hoped that his stepmother had accepted him with sincerity, but she knew it was all an illusion. He could never understand the world of adults. Even at night, his stepmother even organized him. She told him that my parents had accepted him for dinner. She even gave him a reassurance pill. We're a real family now. But while the adults were eating, I suddenly heard my daughter crying upstairs. My lover opened the door in a hurry, but found her daughter sitting on the floor, crying her heart out. She was furious. She shouted at the boy for what he had done to her. The babysitter came right away. She added fuel to the fire by explaining that I was just going to the kitchen for a while. Why is the baby crying like that? The stepmom was even more furious and asked her in a definite tone how she abused my daughter, despite the boy's denials that he didn't. It was her own play that made her cry. But the next moment he was slapped by his father, and this slap completely enraged the son. I didn't realize that the father had a point. He asked me to stop fussing and let me catch my breath. But what's wrong with the son? It's all because of your father, isn't it? The husband assured his ex-wife that he would always be kind to his son, and this was just an exception. Next time, I'll keep my temper. The ex-wife knew the husband was a bad man, so she told her son the truth that he hated him and advised him to stop working on his son. Just for a couple of words with your little wife, you slapped him in the face. Even you indiscriminately said he didn't know what he was doing. It's a wonder your traumatized child can forgive you. Maybe he's afraid of what his ex-wife might say. The man poured himself a few glasses of wine, and here the son is ready to pack his things. Want to leave here with his mother. Suddenly the doorbell rang. The son had a feeling it might be his father, and he was right. He wanted to apologize to his son. The ex-wife was going to tell him that his son doesn't want to see you. The man's anger flared up and he barged right in despite the obstacles. The son watched the scene coldly but said nothing. When the father apologized to him, he said he'd call the police if he didn't leave. Just a few words broke the father's heart. Unexpectedly, the man turned on his ex-wife. He even dragged his ex-wife out to question her. Is this all a plan? The man didn't know that his son was already afraid of him. He even asked his mother to take him far away. The wife knew that the only way to deal with this scoundrel was to use her strength, so she went to a black car. The man in the car didn't expect to be discovered so soon. He first pretended to ask what was the matter. The woman opened the door and took me to see your master, the chairman. The chairman is the father of the youngest wife. She used the father's love for his daughter. Are you happy with your current son-in-law? Obviously, That's a bit of a redundant question. From the father's mouth, he also expressed his helplessness. The woman started to increase the heat. A good girl's future is being held up by this guy. This is exactly what parents want to hear. And she explained why she was here. Although that guy and I have long been divorced. But in the past few years, he's been pestering my family for the sake of the kids. If you think he can make your daughter happy, I have nothing to say. But I'm sure of one thing. His arrogance depends on the fact that he has you behind him. So for the sake of your daughter's happiness, you should have an answer. Although my wife takes care of my daughter at home every day. But she's already got eyes and ears in the company. She knows every move her husband makes. And the man went to his ex-wife again and again. He even contacts her in this way. Her lover has reached the end of her patience. She seems to have made up her mind. The next day, the man was ready to go to work as usual. Before leaving, he even gave his lover a kiss. The man didn't notice anything unusual about her today. And that look was proof that he was finished. It's only been one morning. The man was furious. As soon as he arrived at the front door, he scolded the secretary for not wanting to work. You know how much of a scandal he's just made. He was supposed to meet a client to discuss business. But when he was checking out, he was told that the debit failed. I thought the card had been demagnetized. But when he got a new card, it said it couldn't be read. Fortunately, the man still has 2 cash. But he felt more and more strange. It doesn't make sense. So he went to the secretary. He asked why his card was frozen. But the secretary told him to get lost. And kindly told him, if you want to see your daughter one last time, you'd better go home and see her. The man arrived home in his Ferrari. He found his house had been emptied. He tried to stop it, but it was futile. Because his father-in-law ordered all this. He even prepared his belongings for him. And then he told him to get lost. He was taken aback by the sudden change of events when he heard his father-in-law tell his secretary to take the car away. Son-in-law then reacted and asked what happened. The father-in-law got even angrier. He didn't even listen to his explanation before giving him a big slap on the face because his father-in-law had put up with him for a long time. I admit that my daughter loves a poor man like you. I just want her to be happy, but you can't even do that. Did I invest in your company so you can show off in front of your ex-wife? I've given you many chances, and you didn't cherish them. Then I'll let you go back to the way things were. The man was reluctant to go to his wife and daughter as quickly as possible. He wanted to take his daughter, but he knew that only by persuading his wife would he be able to make a comeback. But the other party has already been disillusioned. The man began to sweet-talk her, but by now, his lover had already made up her mind. He wanted to make a last attempt to hold her back, but it was all in vain. He never thought, a woman can be so cruel that she won't recognize her own family. He stumbled home. He entered his fingerprints and tried to get in. He didn't realize that his lover was so cruel. She didn't even leave him a place to stay. The man vented his frustration. Now he's left with nothing. What did he do wrong? Suddenly a ray of hope appeared in his mind. At least he had a son. But he didn't know that his son had turned his back on his father. He even deleted all the photos of them together. And he was so cruel as to leave none of them behind. Because in his mind, his father was already dead. Suddenly the man seems to see hope. Did his wife come back to him? But when he saw who was coming, his anger rose to the top of his head. He quickly rushed to the car. He rushes to the car, on a mission to vent his emotions. Inside the car, his ex-wife did not move. The ex-wife didn't say a word and gave him a reflective look. But he did not know how terrible the consequences of this man's reflection. But after all, the ex-wife of a husband and wife, some heart softened. She knows that the man is now penniless, so she came back. Then she took out a few large bills from her wallet and threw them right at him. But the man gave her the word devil. The ex-wife thought he was hopeless, but the man didn't wake up and threatened her. Then we'll die together. The wife thought he was just talking in anger and ignored him. But a month later, the man found his son. But the son didn't want to talk to his father. The ex-wife saw the man's poor state. She wanted her son to call her father, but the son couldn't say it. Maybe after a month of reflection, he reminded his son to cherish the people around him. Don't be like him and only regret it when you've lost them. He said he was wrong. But in his son's eyes, he brought all this on himself. The father choked on his last words. I won't bother you anymore. They didn't know their father had made up his mind. Perhaps he had no motivation to live. The man ran straight into the approaching truck. This is an open-ended ending. You can imagine it.